I'll take it.
Are you sure you're not interested? I was like, don't ask me again.
And it's a bad hair day too.
So she's like, scream for me, and then it's just that's
It was a good risk to take, and it was great.
Boom! I'm gonna try and give you a friend, and then I was like,
I wish you had like a granny mask.
That would be so cool, or like a ghost uniform.
And everybody was like totally freaked out.
Hi.
hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jordan. Hello.
Hello, Mark. Like this again, please welcome Boy Deluxe. Hey, how are you?
Hey, what's
Good. Hi.
Nice to have you joining me, and good to see your faces.
I forgot about that picture I saw you posted on Instagram that we took at Tractor.
Yeah. I think if I remember it, that was the show you guys had live painters on stage with you.
Probably.
Bringing it back old school. We used to do that all the time when we first started playing shows in Seattle. And then, I don't know, it just kind of felt right to do it for that show. It's fun.
Until we started adding members, like when we added the bass player and drummer, we had painters the whole time. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I remember my friend Mel was at that same show, and he was like, when it was done, he was like, so what's with the painters? He'd never seen that before, so I was trying to explain to him why they were there.
We got some grief for it in the beginning, right?
Yeah, totally.
People thought it was pretentious, and we're like, look, half our friends are artists. Like, if they can make money selling a painting at one of our shows, you know what I mean? Like, we're super down to support that.
We used to do all that. It's crazy. Anyways, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great up here, and you guys are doing well down there in LA, sounds like.
Yeah. Just getting ready to sweat for the summer.
Yeah,
that's right. And we were talking about that pre-show, but it's already getting warm down there.
Yeah.
We're not sun people, surprisingly.
Yeah, and before we start talking about the EP and the video that dropped about a week ago, I have to tell you that I saw something that you had posted about hands.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I got a problem.
And the reason that was kind of extra funny to me is that, and people that know me well know this, is that my mom talks with her hands all the time, and I inherited that trait. So when I saw your video, I was kind of like, oh my gosh.
I know. I posted it. I had one of my girlfriends, Logan, who I've known forever. She wrote me. She was like, "Yeah, girl, you really do that." I was like, "Fuck, so sorry." I don't know what it is. I don't know. Some people talk with their hands, and then I'm like watching this story. I can't help it. But it was I felt really bad. The other day at work when I realized that this guy was talking and he was using his hands, and I must have been just like staring at his hands like a weirdo. And then I saw him kind of like something clicked in his eyes because we're all masked up, and then he put his hands behind his back like this. Then he kept talking to me like that for the rest of the time we were chatting, and I was like, oh no, I made him feel super weird. I felt bad about it, but I took my glasses off so I can't see you too well. So hopefully. That'll help.
Okay. Well, and also, at least virtually, I mean, like, people can't see the lower half of what I'm doing. My hands don't necessarily come up here too often. They're usually down here. So I think we're all good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about the EP that's coming up. When did you guys start writing this? Was it pre-quarantine time? Was it also during it? What's the timeline like?
Mostly quarantine.
I think it all happened in quarantine. There's one track, the very last track on the EP, Spooky. We had written that at the tail end of Ever So Android, and we've been performing it. We performed it live a couple of times and had been rewriting the ending like 50,000 times. So that song was from before the pandemic, but the other three were all written in quarantine.
Okay, interesting. Because when I was listening to those tracks, Spooky was the one that actually jumped out to me, which kind of makes sense since Ever So Android is what I first came to know you by. So it makes sense. That was kind of almost like a segue song into Boy Deluxe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so it's been hard for everybody. We understand that as a given during this time, especially for creative people to do what they want to be doing. With no shows, it's hard to promote things, hard to connect with people. But how was it for you guys writing those songs then during quarantine? Did it, was it really laborious, or was it kind of, you found pockets of inspiration? How did it kind of work for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say like I write every day as like just an exercise. I write a ton of terrible stuff, but I just write every day just to make sure. And Hope kind of writes when she's inspired. But I think when you reached out for that interview, that's like when all that shit.
Yeah, we had just a lot of personal things kind of.
So like in the beginning of the pandemic, we lost a couple people that were super close to us. They died, and then we had to put our dog down. That was like right when you reached out to us, and we were just like, dude, we don't know what to do. But we were just writing like crazy. I mean, it just made us write. And we were writing these weird sort of like.
There was a lot of grief we were working out.
Yeah, there was a lot of grief, and there was a lot of just, I don't know. We were just like writing, like we would just like write sort of poems and just put them to music, and we were just like being super creative, and that was like our only outlet. I'm a little different than Hope. Like Hope needs, the shows are her outlet completely. You know what I mean? Like mine is like writing. So she goes crazy on stage, and she gets all these sort of like the demons out a little bit, right? And yeah, it's like really cathartic for her. For me, it's more about writing. You know what I mean? I love playing shows, but it's not the same. So I think for her, she had to really change her sort of like where she was. Yeah. So she just started writing a lot more and being a lot more.
I also
like exercising through that. Right?
For sure. It was also the first time ever where there was no shows, no work, no family like there was everybody in the world was in a place where we were inside our homes and there was nothing to do, and everybody was terrified and everybody was grieving, collectively all these things that were happening. And then personally we were going through just a bunch of change and grief on our own, and it kind of felt like all I had ever wanted was, I mean, we had talked about it so many times, like, oh, what would you do if you didn't have to work or you didn't have this or that, and we would always talk about how we would write and do this. So on one hand, I felt like it was this cathartic energy from just life, like having an actual time to stop, to force us to stop and to force us to be present and to force us to just be like, well, what are we going to do with our time? So we started working on music, and then also and I think for Drew too, we had to just process a bunch of emotions and energy, and like, what do you do with that, with everything that was going on.
I want to add too that I think like it says it in our bio. I forgot. I don't even know bio, but like, we write that?
What?
There's this part in it where it's like Ever So Android was everything we thought we should be, and Boy Deluxe is everything we just want to be. Like it's just really, it's much more what we are. And I think with Ever So Android, there was a lot of pressures, mostly by ourselves, some by like people that were working with us, but mostly by ourselves, that like we had to be this thing in this box, and with I think Boy Deluxe started right before the pandemic, and we were just like, dude, let's just write whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever, because we had all these like poppier songs or a little more hip hop or whatever, all these other songs like on the side, but they never fit into Ever So Android. And we were like, well, we can't be in a band that does spooky and bundle. Like that doesn't exist, right? We felt this pressure to be these
one or the other.
And then now we're just like, who gives a shit? We're just like, that's the band we are. We write those kinds of songs. We write these like punky, post-punky, like heavy songs, and then we write these like harder hip hoppy kind of. You know what I mean? This is like a little industrial, I guess. Like, and so instead of like trying to fit it in anything, we're like, we're just gonna just write whatever. And so,
what's actually interesting too, kind of like for me, the last stint about writing those songs was the first 3 songs, like I said, we wrote in quarantine, but we were doing these like writing exercises where we would we had to create some sort of schedule for ourselves so we didn't just melt into the abyss of nothingness, right? And so what we did was like Drew was saying earlier, he writes constantly. So we had all these beats, and the conversation was like, well, you know, man, we don't really need to like write anything from scratch. Let's like try and use these beats that we have and make something. So we would like do our morning routine, drink first coffee, go for a big walk. We'd come home, have some breakfast, have another cup of coffee, and then we'd like sit down, and we would each one of us would write poems. I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, just write something down, just whatever. It didn't matter. And then we would choose a beat, and then we would kind of like ad lib and use these songs together. And the whole point, though, the whole practice was to not overcomplicate it, to write a song in a day. That was we didn't have anything to do, so we're like, just write some lyrics, whatever, write a poem, we have a beat, just like keep it simple and write a song. And so that's actually how we wrote the first 3 songs.
Ashes and Creeps on our Spotify.
And that one too. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, thank you for sharing the insight into that whole process. And yeah, I actually kind of forgot what was going on with you guys on a personal level. So I'm really sorry for your losses.
It's fine. We felt bad. Like we were like, we should do this, and we were just like,
yeah, very strange.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, because one thing, and some of the folks from the Alice tour know this, is that when they reached out to me back in May about joining the tour, I wasn't in the best place myself, and I was really thinking about saying no. I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Sounds like a lot of work. My head's not in the right place. I'm not in the game right now. And luckily, their singer said, well, why don't we just try to have like a video call basically, and we can kind of talk about things. And as soon as I saw the band and their faces and heard them, I saw them like back in 2017. It wasn't like we're fast friends or anything. Immediately I felt connected to them. I felt good about things. It's like, yeah, let's jump into the deep end and do this and just see what happens. And I'm so thankful that some part of me decided to say yes, because if I had said no, we wouldn't be here right now doing this, because this was the furthest thing from my mind in terms of talking to people virtually, as we were saying pre-show. So I totally understand when things are not just at the right place at the right time. And clearly you had things to process through, which is completely human and natural. I had, if it helped you at all, I had other people that I'd reached out to, and when all the things out in society were happening, I totally understand if they were like, Mark, I just can't deal with this right now. I'm so stressed out about things, and I'm just feeling, and they might be at protests, they might be doing anything else, or just being in their own home because of the pandemic was stressful enough that I'm very empathetic to that, because there's times when I'm like, I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like, I got an interview at 7 o'clock. I don't feel like doing this, because I would rather just kind of process myself. And yet it's like, well, I know that we're providing some sort of outlet for people that were tuning in every night on that tour. So let's kind of do it. I know damn well, because the band's in LA, so they're feeling all kinds of craziness down there at that time, that end of May, early June, the rioting going on and looting and all this other shit. So it's like, yeah, we're all kind of like collecting together. And luckily, we kind of created this community and managed to, carry forward. But I understand when it's like, yeah, fuck this. I don't want to do this right now.
I think, thinking back on that time, 2 things come to mind. One, we were all trying to figure out healthy ways to cope with what's going on. And kind of to your point about being present with things when you don't want to be, sometimes having those kinds of routines that are outside of you are really helpful for processing things, helping our state of mind. Right? It's like having a dog. You can't, it's really hard to be super upset when you have to take your dog for a walk, or like take care of this other animal, and put your feelings aside, be present for something else.
Yeah, very well said. And I think even some of the things that I was doing for myself, when I look back at it, it was somewhat of a distraction for things that maybe I didn't want to deal with at the time. But at the same time, I really became this odd silver lining for me, that I've connected with people literally all over the world during a freaking pandemic that I never would have met. And I got credentialed as a film reviewer during the pandemic. So I've got a looking at that list right now of all these films I gotta watch and review at some point. But that's great. I mean, I'm super, super grateful for it. But things come, opportunities come in the weirdest places at the weirdest times sometimes. And I'm just lucky that I guess I was present enough, or just out there enough to kind of make things connect that way. And it even goes back to like what we're talking about right now. I thought about that. I said, I was late to the game with Ever So Android. You guys have been playing shows up here in Seattle for many, many years before I finally saw you live. And I remember this. I think the show that I saw was your last show in Seattle at Numa Host. So I'm like, I'm chasing Ben. Yeah. The one with homosexual and sundries and wild power.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, yeah, man. I mean, hopefully, I just got vaccinated. Drew's halfway vaccinated. We're kind of hoping that by the fall, maybe.
Yeah, we're talking to people about shows right now.
We're feel a little tentative about it, just because I don't know.
We're so used to not doing any, like not playing shows, just like writing. And then people are like, "You guys want to do this? You want to tour?" And we're like, "Dude, I don't know." I mean, like, yes, obviously, but we're still. It's like nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
We're used to just being alone in our little studio writing. So that's how public.
Every time I talk to a musician, like the world opening up and then like playing shows and stuff, and how we're like, oh, it's like, that's in the fall. It's just around the corner, even though it's 8 months away or something like that. Every single one of my friends I've talked to about it has been like, oh my God, like I hope I know how to talk to people. Like I hope I can play my instrument. Like, I don't know.
We've been offered a couple like live stream things to play, and we're like, dude, we're not ready. Like we're just so out of practice. In like Bundles, for example, we've never played that song live. Like we've never practiced that song. That's like all completely just done in our studio. I mean, we performed it in that way, but we've never like had the whole band together.
I was thinking about how we're gonna have to learn like, catalog of music.
Our whole set's gonna be.
Well, yeah, and you'll get there and just take the steps that you need to at some point. But I understand, because I just saw a press release this morning where in Hawaii there's an artist that's going to be performing in person, socially distanced concerts, but at the same time they're going to live stream that thing out to help make up some of the other end of the money. And I think you're going to see quite a bit of that hybrid going on, where even like up here, I know like the Nectar was doing a bunch of live streams last spring and I think a little bit into the summer. So they have the equipment there to do it. So if a band books a show, maybe it's 50% capacity, so you can physically go. But if you can't be there, if you're somewhere halfway across the world, you can still buy a virtual ticket and still, check out the show that way, which is not the same as being there in person, obviously, but it's something. So I think we're going to see a lot of this hybrid stuff for a while.
I'm so curious about that. Like, Hope and I talk a lot. We know some people around here that like run venues that were trying to sort of do live stream stuff right in the very beginning of it, and it wasn't really going well. Even their bigger bands, like it wasn't retaining an audience. And it's like the same for me. It's like I don't know. I don't want to watch an hour-long set on my phone of anybody. Like even my favorite bands. Like it's just this weird. But I'm wondering if when people are there and there's this live show and you're kind of part of that. You know what I mean? It's not just like some band on a stage somewhere. Like there are people there.
I also think it's
No, totally. I'm just.
It isn't. No, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the world kind of looks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're definitely going into this hopefully transitory period, and that we don't start regressing and it becomes like, okay, everything's off the table for the fall. Because every press release I see for club level to theater level bands, it's all about the fall. And that also means there's going to be a bunch of artists out at the same time trying to book gigs, and that's assuming that the clubs are still there, that the money's still there, for the talent buyers and everything else. So there's all kinds of unknowns.
Have any venues closed up in Seattle?
To my knowledge, I don't think any of them have, and which is obviously a really good thing. Yeah, I don't think any of them officially have. The only thing I can think of is there's a spot down towards Tacoma called Louis G's, which I believe closed permanently, and they used to book a lot more like rock and metal kind of stuff. But like the Sunset and Numos and Nectar and the High Dive, and I think all of those are still around. But hopefully they can, as you already know, hopefully they can make that transition, because once they start opening their doors, they have to have X amount of shows already booked to keep the money keep coming in. They can't just do one here, one there, and hope that it's going to retain a security staff and bar staff and everything else.
I wonder if it's going to be hard for like local bands to get shows. Like I wonder, like a lot of independent artists are going to be like competing for a slot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I kept thinking that what was going to happen would be that local bands, especially as we get towards, well, up here at least towards summer, they can play outside, so they can have more people there, because you don't have to worry about being inside of a venue per se. But at the same time, yeah, if you got a bunch of touring bands coming through trying to book places, then there's only so much room in so many days. So I don't really know what's going to happen. I've also been hearing some scuttlebutt about, even for the touring bands, they're taking much more of a risk. So like they might have to basically book shows for 2 weeks before they start making any kind of money from their tour. So that's a huge gamble for them. Instead of maybe they would have had some money up front to maybe get the tour started, they won't have it now. So yeah, craziness. But we'll just deal with it as it comes. I mean, that's all we can do. But yeah, Drew, I'm with you. It was weird initially for me to see any of the bands I like, including being on the Atlas tour. I've seen them do like a 45-minute set on my laptop. It's like, okay, it's cool that there's something there. I'm not knocking that whatsoever, but it's like, okay, I can only do this for so long, because this is not the same thing. It's not even close.
It doesn't matter how good the band is either. I mean, it's like, it's just I just think consistently to be like, very few. I just just knowing me, I really lose interest. We've also, to be fair, and not to sound super jaded, but we've gone to thousands of shows. You know what I mean? Literally, like we've gone to between touring and just playing shows constantly.
That's why it was a little expensive, and like I don't think we're the target.
No, I understand that, but they really.
Either way.
Yeah, well, and I had a friend that recently was trying to rebrand her name, and so she reached out to me knowing that I write. Said, "Mark, can you help me, generate a new name for my music project?" And I was literally coming up with names that I thought I was creating out of thin air, like with spellings and things that I didn't think were actually words. And then we'd look on Google or something. It's like, oh shit, it's already been taken. So I'm wondering, how was it for you finding Boy Deluxe?
You know what it was for us was like
weeks.
Well, it was a long time. Well, actually, we were going to be called something else for a minute, and then a good friend of ours who died, actually, but he was like, this is derivative of something else, and I think you guys are better than that. I don't know if you remember Bill Reefland, but like he was a close friend of ours. He was like,
that's why we're named Boy Deluxe, because one of the last time I was in Seattle before the pandemic hit, I went and I was catching up with him, and I value Bill's opinion, and so does Drew. So
and he's a legend.
A fucking legend. And so when we were talking about changing the name of our band, we had this totally other name. And I remember talking to Bill, telling him about it. We were catching up. And then I got on my plane to come back to LA, and I got an email from him. It was like, yeah, he's like, I don't want to like step on your toes or anything like that, but you want to stick out, you don't want to be derivative or sound like any other band. Like I think you could do better. And we kept thinking of names and came up with Boy Deluxe. I totally forgot.
Well, we were really set on the boy thing, which also is like, there's Boy Harsher, so it's a little derivative of that in this weird way, but it's like we couldn't let it go. We're like, we love this. Like, we love this word. Like, so what do we, so then it became like, how do we separate ourselves from all this stuff?
It's, I'm not trying to sound like a turd right now, but coming up with band names is the worst. I hate it.
Well, plus you share with your friends, and like one person's like, that is the dopest shit. And the next
Yeah.
person is like, it's such garbage. Please don't call your project
Yeah.
that. It's just like any name you could ever come up with, people are gonna love or hate. And we had some friends like, because we were talking to like bigger industry people like that we have like relationships with. We were like, what do you think about this name or that name? And they're like, dude, it doesn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? They're like, you decide what the name means. You know,
like Pearl Jam. Drew and
yeah,
I
we always
talked
use
about
Pearl
that.
Jam as an example because it's like the worst band name
It's
in
not a great
history,
name.
in my opinion.
But there's meaning behind it, right? And like,
Well, you don't think of Pearl Jam, that band, when you think of the name. And I think that was the point with people all the time. They're like, you're going to define what that name means, no matter what it is. So as long as it's not like excessively bad. Yeah. But it's hard because you feel this like, that was the thing with Ever So Android at the end. I just felt no connection to the name. We used to joke about that, right?
We even started theoretically, we were writing the tail end of Ever So Android. We started writing different songs, and we were using like this made up band name. We're like, oh, the band for these songs is called this.
Yeah. That was before we even thought of stopping Ever So Android. But we were just writing so many songs that like didn't fit in that box. We're like, well, what would this band do if they were writing?
And then we realized we're like, oh man, this aren't that band anymore. It's like it's kind of like a relationship, like when you're with your person or your partner, and then like things are kind of fizzling out, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like with this person or that person, or like maybe we should call this what it is.
That's interesting because I know, there's been a couple other people that I know musician-wise that kind of had the same thing, that they were writing material and they're like, this just doesn't feel like what we're known for, and so do we just try to, like what I think Drew was talking about earlier, do we try to force it back into what we're known for, or do we just kind of follow this path? And they chose, like what you guys did, to follow that path and not really think about the noise out here and think this is what is making us happy right now. This is what's coming out of us. So this is the path we should go. Whichever way it goes, we're just going to follow it. And I think that should be commended because I think it would be easy to say, well, we'll just put this off to the side, or this will be some other little project that we do. We're going to still stay this, even if it's like, well, we don't have any connection to it anymore. So it's better just to kind of lay it to rest and move on.
I see it in LA a lot too. Like people are faced with that. It's real. Those things are really subtle, in my opinion. It's like you just start gradually going down this path of not doing what you want. Like we've definitely been approached by people that are like, hey, we really like what you guys do. What if you like just twisted it, kind of like did it like this? They don't say it like that. They're like, but what, like listen to this band. What do you think about that? And it's so easy because like that's where the money is too. It's like, hey, we can give you this money, just do this thing. And we're like, we've been faced with that a couple times and we're like, should we? Like, do we? We're so tired of being broke all the time. Like, should we? You know what I mean? And then eventually we're just like, fuck that, dude. Like, let's just fucking write what we want to write. And again, like that's where Boy Deluxe came from. It's just the spirit of that. Like, I really don't, of course we want to do well and succeed and like play big shows and all that, but there's a part of us, and I think this is talk about like silver linings in the pandemic kind of thing. Like there was nothing more beautiful than like going through all that and then just writing it out. You know what I mean? Just being fucking artists, not for anyone else. We didn't know if we were going to put it on Spotify or anything. We were just like writing like fucking crazy. And like, that's what it's about. It's not really about, so I see a lot of people down here, they start chasing that thing. It's never like, hey, we want you to be a totally different band and dress like clowns. Like they never sell it to you like that. That's just where you end up 10 years later, right? Like it's just this gradual, like chipping away at your integrity and your, your artistic vision. And it's not that we're special or anything else like that. Like if I would understand if no one listened to us. It's like we don't write it, but we're just like writing what we want to write. And like for us, ultimately, being basically in projects together for 10 years, we were just like, that's all that really matters. Like, are we, like serving ourselves and feeding our souls a little bit, or are we not? And so whenever we feel like we're not, let's just fuck all that. Let's just do what we do.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I mean, I can't speak to other forms of art, but I can speak to music and writing songs that like, dude, the songs are gonna come out. Sometimes you have a control over, you can like craft a song and be like, I want to write a Beach Boys style song or whatever. But like for the most part, it comes out the way it comes out. And I guess what I'm saying is that these songs, whether we wanted to or not, started coming out of us. And it wasn't the same thing anymore. There wasn't Ever So Android anymore. And furthermore, we weren't those people anymore. And so it's like, dude, it's like puberty, whether you want it or not, like it's coming. So, change and go with it. There was something else I was going to say, but I totally forgot.
Well, no, and that makes sense. I mean, even like when you're saying about you didn't even know if you're going to put this music on Spotify or just even get it out to the world, it's kind of something that was coming out of you, that just Hope just said, and something that you wanted to do. I think back to when I started doing what I call the art side of Eclectic Arts, because I was covering all the music stuff, all different types of music, but then I started doing theater and musical theater and ballet and opera. And so some of the photographers that I know locally, they're kind of like, Mark, where you been? We haven't seen you at too many shows. Like, oh, I've been covering all this other stuff. And they're kind of like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, because I want this to be as selfish as possible. It's something that I choose to do. And if it resonates with them, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too, because that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to talk to Boy Deluxe, or I want to talk to someone from Brazil, or I want to talk to a film director in Australia. And yeah, either you're with it or you're not, and that's okay. It's kind of like this, and I kind of view it almost like the circus too, that if you don't like the high wire act, maybe you like the guy getting shot out of a can. Don't like that, maybe you like, the trapeze artist or whatever. And if you don't like any of it, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Totally.
And what's interesting too is man, that it's tangible, because it's like when you start doing exactly what you want to do, people are automatically drawn to it. You know what I mean? If there's even a hint of pandering inside whatever art we're making, whatever form it takes, like, you can tell, and so the more genuine it is, the more interesting. Like it's going to make me want to listen to what you do so much more when you're genuinely interested in it. It's the same with writing songs. It's like, man, I don't want to hear a song that you didn't like writing. That's not, it doesn't sound fun. You can catch on. So yeah, it's easy to get caught up, but like, and as corny as this is, but you gotta follow your bliss, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. I've had several people talk about how they can tell when someone's basically doing it for the money, or they're faking it, or they're doing it to be popular, or whatever, on get more likes on social media, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, but would you actually sit there and actually enjoy that yourself 100%, or are you just doing it for some other reason? If you can't say 100%, then why are you doing it?
I think ultimately that's a shallow pursuit, and I didn't realize that in Seattle, but I realized that down here, because we have friends like we have a good friend that's like a really, like a songwriter for like a huge record label, and writes all these songs, and he just fucking hates it. You know what I mean? He's like, it's like not what he wants to do at all, but it's where all his money comes from, and he's just like, he just hates it. And I'm like, and that's what I mean when people start going down this path. They're like, I don't know.
It's so subtle. It's like
it starts so subtle.
So
that's the thing. Like, oh, hey, let me get you in with this person, and then it just turns into this thing. That being said, I mean, I do think this is the three of us, and probably a lot of people that like your show are a specific kind of person. Like, it does matter to me if something's genuine. Like, we did go to shows constantly pre-pandemic, and you can tell when something's genuine. And we used to say that all the time. We'd be like, I mean, there's a lot of bands we really like, but if it was a band we weren't really feeling, but they were like in it and they believed it and it was genuine, we still respect the shit out of it. We're like, this isn't for me, but like, this is awesome. Like we could do that. But then I always think about like Cardi B or something. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's nothing genuine. I mean, it's Beyonce. It's like, and don't get me wrong, I love some of those songs, like those kinds of, but it is a very pandery. It's not written, there's nothing genuine. It's theater, And I think there's two different kinds of things. There's like theater, like huge pop is like theater. And then there's those bands that just like, you just feel like crazy. Like for me, it's like,
well, it's like, do you want to go to your favorite like mom and pop restaurant on the street, or do you want to go to Fred Meyer's?
Fred Meyer's.
Yeah,
good reference.
You'll find it at Fred Meyer's. Bing.
Yeah, no, that makes, I think, a lot of sense. And people, and I just talked to someone yesterday who's an independent artist out of Texas, who does all kinds of different art. So he's into comic book stuff and music and acting and all this kind of thing. And he's gotten a lot of flack for it. And it's kind of like, but that's what he's passionate about. And you can tell he's been doing this since he was like 5. And he's just trying to find his audience. And he's actually going to be moving to LA in May to kind of pursue some more opportunities. But it's like, and we were talking about the same things, like, well, yeah, you should just keep doing what you're doing because you feel that it's right. And if you start, and it would be interesting to see, like a year from now, if he starts to find those little subtle influences that start changing him into something he may not see at the time, but maybe 5 years from now, he's kind of like, oh shit, I never should have said yes to that because then it took me down a different path. But we won't know.
That's life, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know until you try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely tried a lot of stuff. I mean, that was the interesting thing about Ever So Android was we started exactly where Boy Deluxe started. We just were like, hey, I really like this person and I like making art with them. And that's literally all it was. Like, we talk about it all the time, like, if we could imagine where we're at right now, like when we were playing like Skylark for 6 people, you know what I mean? Like, and we played that show like 60 times. Like we played a bunch of that show, just to like nobody. And we just did it because we had fun and we met some cool people along the way and whatever. And then it started like ambition crept in, not because of, it's because these external things start happening. Like you're like, oh shit, we just sold that place out, or like all these people are coming, or KXP wants to talk to you, or you know what I mean? It's like all these things start happening. And then that thing clicks in your brain where you're like, oh, could we make a living at this? Could we do this instead of like the bullshit we're doing to survive, And then that switch sort of flicks, right? But then eventually, like there's no end to that game. Like at least for us we got to this place, and Numos was actually a really cool show for us as a last show because there was way less people than we were drawing before that. And we're like, this is the perfect time to go. You know what I mean? We're like, we just kind of like, we're just coming over our peak. And like, we felt that for a while. Like we were fighting so hard to make sure our shows were packed and all that. And then
how many times can you do the same thing over and over?
Yeah, we kept saying that. We're like, how many, like Seattle's only so big. Like how many people don't want to see the same show over and over and over again? Like how many times can we do that? And so it just hit this point, and then I think we came down here, and we had a couple years of like doing Ever So Android still, right? Just trying to like make it be something more than like where it was at. And then eventually you just kind of like crack, and you're just like, I don't care anymore. I can't wake up giving a shit about this anymore, right? One day,
it's so exhausting,
right? And then all of a sudden we were just like went full circle after like 7 years or whatever, and just went back to writing whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
It took all this like
it's actually
huge detour.
This conversation is actually it's reminding me of things that were happening that I forgot about. Like I forgot that our name is Boy Deluxe because of Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot about all the riots and about just that whole period of time. Like I totally, until right now, I'd forgotten about that. And it's giving me this interesting perspective because we started Boy Deluxe right before the pandemic, and we had like all these shows lined up. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And like our bass player has a band. We're like, let's go on the road, man. But and then it just came to a screeching halt. And my point is the relationship that we've developed with this project has been through this year, and how interesting that's been, and how when there's no one looking, who are you and what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's Boy Deluxe. Nobody was
That's
around.
why we're terrible at Instagram and stuff. Because we're just like about like once every couple of weeks, we're like, dude, we have to post something. Like we don't love social media, right? Like it's just such a burden to have to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's very private. It's just about like writing. And shows feel private. There's an intimacy to live shows. And maybe that's the disconnect I feel like. We can create these things and we're in our practice space and we do that and we go play shows and we meet people like you and you know what I mean? And it's intimate and there's this thing. It's all that detached sort of the things you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
Those are really hard for us. And plus she's younger and I'm always like, you're supposed to be the social media one. And she hates it even more
anxiety.
than I do. So I'm like,
because like show me one person where like being on the social media grind doesn't give them like either weird like body dysmorphia or like crippling anxiety or like sleep patterns, depression, like you name it, it cooks it up and gives it to you. So.
I totally agree. I've talked to other people about this, that if I wasn't doing Eclectic Arts, I wouldn't be on social media.
Absolutely.
But if I don't let people know when I'm doing things, then it's like, well, that is kind of hurting the purpose of having an interview. So it's like, I can't win. But on a personal level, you don't see much about what's going on with me. And I've also talked about how anyone that's on social media, you're only getting maybe a glimpse of who they actually are, because you just put up what you want to put up. You don't put up, some people don't put up the shit and some people do and whatever. And it's like, you still don't know who they are. And it's a weird thing to have some stranger from some other part of the world start following you and liking you and commenting and all this kind of stuff. And they think they know you really well and they'll DM you stuff. And you're like, it's nice and everything as long as you don't get too creepy, but also don't expect me to reply to you immediately because I'm just.
I do think there is like a group of people they're just good at it and they enjoy it and they have a healthy relationship with it. Like I'm just not in that group. Like our relationship is not healthy with it. So it's either too much or too little, and this constant obligation to do it.
Yeah, they probably have like healthy relationships with their families and shit too. You know what I'm saying? Had a good childhood with their parents.
Oh man. Well, hey, I want to. So do we have anything coming up, like another music video for Boy Deluxe? Anything else before we kind of wrap this up?
Our next single is going to come out April 9th for a song called Ride High. And then after that, in May something, like the first or second week of May, I'm so sorry, we're going to release another single, but have the full EP.
The rest of the EP comes out that day too.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And Drew and Hope, is so great connecting with you again and seeing you guys. And I wish you every success with Boy Deluxe, and I wish it on your terms. If you ever want to reach out and promote the actual EP release in May, we can do another one of these if you'd like. You know how to get a hold of me, and I know how to get a hold of you. So really great seeing you guys again, and take good care down there in LA.
Yeah,
for sure. See you.
Bye.
Bye.